Hello to my super second graders and other artists that may be watching this. Today, we are going to use the element of art, line, and shape to create a still life art project inspired by the artist Paul Cezanne. Cezanne spent most of his life in France, and he was a very shy man, but he was totally devoted to two things: his art and his son. Cezanne was known for his still life paintings, and a still life painting is a painting that is just of items or things that do not move. Cezanne would arrange everyday objects like apples and bowls and vases and cutlery on a table. But sometimes it would take him so long to paint the finished project that the fruit would actually rot before he finished it. Cezanne was also known for developing a new method of simplifying shapes into cones, this, into cylinders like this, or spheres like this. This technique became known as Cubism. We have studied other artists in the past who were Cubists. Pablo Picasso is one that you might remember who helped develop this particular method. This technique of Cubism spread across Europe and became very, very popular. People would ask for paintings of special things in their lives to be made, and they would include everything from a hairbrush or things that had been handed down to them, flowers, fruits, and other household objects like jars or vases. So today we're going to create a still life of apples in a bowl that's inspired by Paul Cezanne. So if you look, it's a very simple art project. When you think about apples, what shape do you typically think of? Well, Cezanne thought of just a perfect sphere. Well, we know that when we look at apples, they're not all exactly the same. Some of them are more rounded, some of them are tapered at the bottom and bigger at the top. But he just decided to make them very, very simple and almost all similar in shape. So if you look at these apples, they pretty much all look the same except for their color. He also simplified other objects as much as possible when he created his artwork. So that's who has inspired our project for today. You're going to need a piece of paper or your art folder, and you can use a pencil to begin your sketch and a box of crayons to add in color. So here we go. Let's get started. I'd like for you to turn your folder, if you're using your art folder, so that it's the holes and the prongs are up at the top, and your top of your folder or the front of your folder is folded up and away from you. And that way all you have to worry about is your paper here at the bottom. So we're going to get started first by drawing the top part of our bowl. So we want to create this line right here. And if you'll notice, I've got a little bit more than 3 fingers space on this side and a little bit more than 3 fingers of space on the other side. So let's work on drawing that now. So I'm going to get my sketching pencil. Here we go. All right, I'm going to come up about the width of my hand. You guys might want to come up a little bit more than that because my hand is obviously much bigger than yours. But you don't want to come quite to halfway. You can even take your paper and you can fold it and put a little mark right there so you know where halfway is. And you want to draw your line below. So like I said, here's halfway. I'm going to put 4 fingers on this side. I'm going to come down from that a little bit. Now I'm going to draw a line over this way to here, and then I'm going to put 4 fingers over here and this way to here. So I marked it with just little dots, and now I can draw my line. Now, if I want to make this a little bit closer to the edges, I can, but I think I'm going to stop there. Now, before I draw this curve in my bowl, I can kind of look at where my top line is and estimate where I want the bottom of the bowl before I make the little stand that it's sitting on. You don't have to include that. It would absolutely look just fine without it, but you can put a little base on your bowl if you like. So I'm going to kind of estimate the middle of this right here, and I'm going to come down, and this is going to be the bottom of my bowl. So I'm right-handed, and one thing that I have learned is you can move your paper, but your hand only moves certain directions. So because it is very easy for my wrist to move in this direction, I can start at this line, and I can very, very lightly go out to that line. Then I can turn it again, and I can take this one, and I can turn my wrist again, and very lightly go out to that line. So I now have the main part of my bowl. If I want to make a base on the bottom, I estimate about where I want to start it, and I come down in a little bit of a curve at the bottom, and then I want to put a gentle curve on this. So now I have the bowl and a stand. I'm going to erase a little bit of this so it's not quite so dark. You guys should still be able to see it. Remember, when you draw, I'm drawing much darker because I want you guys to be able to see this on the video. But remember the rule that we draw light until we get it right. And so you really want your sketch lines to be very, very faint. You do not want them to be as dark as Miss Madden's lines are right now. Okay, so let's go back and look and see what we need to do next. So we have our bowl, and we have the base of our bowl. So now we want to think about our apples. Now, if I were to line up my apples side by side by side, it wouldn't look very realistic, because when we put apples into a bowl or a basket, those apples are kind of all over the place, and some are covering up others. So this one, it looks like this green apple is in the front, the yellow apple is directly behind it, and the red apple is further back even than the yellow apple. The orange apple is back here, and the deep red apple is back at the very back on the other side of the bowl. So it is the furthest away from us, and the green one is the closest to us. So how do we capture that? Well, one thing that you can do is you can collect things like Miss Madden does. So this is the top of a peanut butter jar, the top of a hairspray container, the top of a Play-Doh, and the top of laundry detergent. So you guys look at all these things. Obviously, I'm collecting lots of things that make circles. So one of the things that Cezanne was remembered for was that typically his artwork was so simplified, and all of his apples would be almost exactly the same size. So I think I'm going to probably go with, I think I'm going to use that for my apples, because I think those are probably too big. So I'm going to start over here. And when I'm drawing an apple, obviously it wouldn't be outside the bowl. I want it to make sure that it is sitting inside the bowl. Now, if my bowl is not glass, it's not see-through, then whatever part of my apple is sitting down inside this bowl is not going to show. I could bring that down even more, where it looked like there's an apple on the very, very bottom down here. But I'm just going to come up about halfway on the putty top And you want to start at the top of the line where your bowl is. You don't want to go to the very edge. You want to pull it in just a little bit so it looks like the apple is sitting down inside the bowl. So you guys are going to very gently trace around an object that you have at home, or you can freehand, and let me show you how to do that. So this would be the first apple. It is obviously in the front. So I'm going to do another apple over here on this side. And I'm just going to very gently create a curve on there. So see, I didn't even have to use this. Now, I want to go back in and create another apple that is behind these two, okay? So I'm going to overlap both of those a little bit. It almost kind of looks like a bowl of ice cream, doesn't it? And I'm going to push this up just a small amount because I want this apple to kind of be sitting up a little bit. Now this time I'm not going to start down here at the bowl. I'm going to start where this apple circle is, and I'm going to go around, and I'm going to stop where the other apple is. I'm going to stop it right there. So now this apple is behind these two. I can continue adding more and more apples, but I do not want to overlap those apple lines I've already made. So there we go. I think that is plenty of apples for now. Okay, so now let's think about what an apple typically looks like. When you look at an apple, you will notice that there are lots of colors in apples. Think of all the different colors that apples come in. So you can have green apples or red apples. There are even some yellow apples that you might find in the grocery store. And typically apples are not one solid color. Your apples will range in colors by the different varieties. So this might be a Granny Smith apple, and it's a really pretty yellow green. You might have another type of apple that's very deep, rich green, and it maybe has just some little brown flecks in it. So I'm not quite sure what those are called. Then you might have an apple that has yellows and reds in it, just like this one. I think this other one was a peach. I picked up the wrong thing. So red around the top, and then it kind of gets yellow and orange as it goes down to the bottom. And you could even draw an apple. One of these apples might be a view from the bottom of the apple. And so you can see how there's some little black in there where the flower was, and some green and some yellow. Or you might want to turn it so that you see the actual stem coming out, kind of like I did with this one. And so you can kind of see where the stems are and here. And there's kind of an indentation in there where it kind of goes into the apple area. So we're going to keep those in mind as we create our apples. So here we go. For this first one, we can pretend like we are doing the underside of the apple. So I'm going to kind of put that one, I guess I'll hold it right there so that we can see it. All right, so in the middle of this, I want to just kind of rough in this little area right here. I'm just going to go ahead and put some black in there. I can go back and add some brown later. And then I'm just going to gently kind of shift in a little bit of variety in there, kind of some lines that kind of are shaded a little bit. I'm actually using the side of my pencil just to kind of create some lines that represent these bumps that you see kind of going around the edge. It doesn't quite look like a line, but we could draw that as a line and then as a bump going around. So as you kind of see these areas, it starts to take on the look of the bottom of an apple. So that's maybe why this one's a little bit smaller. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to another one. Maybe we want this one to have the stem of the apple maybe coming out right here. And I'm going to draw just this little bit of a curve right there. And inside this curve, I want to come up at an angle, get back down a little bit, and then as I bring this triangle back in, I'm not going to touch the other end. I'm going to come out just a little bit, and then I'm going to put just a little bit of an oval on the end of that stem. I could even kind of go around a little bit with that circle to finish it off. I think for this one, I want to kind of do a stem out here on the very end. I'm just going to ignore that line right now. Come back in, do the edge of my stem, and I can go back in and color over that and not worry about it. Maybe this one kind of comes this direction. Goes around a little bit. Most of the time when artists will sketch, they work all over their page. I like to teach beginners to kind of think through things step by step, but as you become more confident as artists, you will learn that you can also work on several areas at once. So again, we're doing that kind of a weird triangle, a little tiny oval at the end. I'm just kind of darkening the shade a little bit right there on that one. And then I think I'm going to do this one over here. So we don't have to put stems on all these, but it's just kind of fun to draw the stem. Now on this one, I want to add a leaf. So I'm just going to come over and have a little line coming down like this. And then I'm just going to add a leaf shape. Maybe this one got picked in a hurry and they forgot to take the leaf off of it. So that one's still going to have a little leaf on it. So if you like, you can pause this video and get caught up to this point. And once you do that, then come back and we will move on. Okay. Welcome back. I'm going to come through with my eraser and erase some of these lines where my fingers have kind of smeared the edges a little bit. Okay. Now I want to create a little bit of detail on my bowl. So if you look at this one that I did earlier, I just have a stripe here and a stripe here at the bottom. You can put any kind of design you like on your bowl. Maybe you want to come up here. Maybe you want to do a rim up here. I want to kind of keep my line about the same all the way across. And maybe you want to have a bowl that has some circles on it. You can do any kind of bowl that you like. Now remember, bowls are round. So as I have a circle over here, I might only see a very small part of it. Okay, I may even have one down here on the bottom. Maybe I have another one over here coming off this side. Just remember, bowls are not flat, they are round. Okay, so we've got our bowl, the base of our bowl, and we now have some apples on here. You can absolutely add more leaves if you like to any of these. This is the bottom of the apple, so obviously we wouldn't need to worry about adding any leaves to that. All right, so the last thing that we want to do is we want to decide where our tabletop is going to be. So if you look at this, it obviously would not have been a good idea to put the tabletop line way down here at the bottom, because then my bowl and my apples would look like it was floating up above the table, way up here. We want it to look like our bowl is sitting on the table. So we're going to come up about 4 fingers for Miss Madden. You guys might want to do 4 or 5, but you want to make sure that your line is fairly straight. And I want to take my line with my finger and I want to go all the way across. And then I'm going to start zoop on the other side. And I'm going to come all the way across this way. So now I have my tabletop. And you guys can plan any type of design on your tabletop that you like. This one is just a red and gray stripe. It is absolutely up to you guys what you want to do. But I do want to show you very quickly how to add color to your apples. All right, so one thing that we do know is that apples have lots of red and orange in them. So I got my reds and oranges out. I've got this goldenrod and a yellow out. My brown, obviously, a regular green and the yellow green. And then I got blue and gray because this was the colors of my bowl. I think I'll just keep those colors. I really kind of like how those work together, but I might add this yellow green in there. So maybe I'll do those 2 colors instead of the gray this time. All right, so let's think about these apples and what kind of colors you want to have. So if I were going to create a deep red apple, very, very dark like this, even when I look at this, I still see some areas that are almost white. Those are highlights caused by the reflection of light coming from above. And I want to make sure that I include some of those areas of light. So you can see how there's some light areas here, and there's one here, here, there's 2 here, and here's another area of highlight. So you want to make sure you do those areas. So I'm going to go ahead and plan those in right now. So if my light source is coming from over here, we'll pretend like this is the sun. Better yet, let's pretend like this is the sun. The sun is facing this way, and so my light is going to be coming from this direction. If the light is coming from this direction, then this is the areas that will have highlights on them. Light's coming from this direction. This is the side that will have a highlight. Again, this direction. So this is the side that gets the highlight. Maybe even on the bottom, because these are kind of bumpy, might get a couple of highlights. And then one more over here, because this is the direction of the light source. There's our highlight, okay? So now that we know where to put our highlights, we know that those areas are going to be the lightest, okay? The first thing I think I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and color in my stems. So I'm going to take my brown and I'm just going to color the side of the stem and the ends. And I can go back with my pencil and draw these stems a little bit darker if I want, just so that it has an edge to it. I even want to put a little bit of brown in that leaf right there, and maybe put some brown right there in the center part of that apple. Okay. If you like, you can add a little bit of brown into these little crevices where the stem is coming out. Typically, those are going to be green, regardless of what color your apple is. So I'm going to add a little bit of green in here. Just kind of coloring in just a little bit of squiggles on the ends. A little bit of green right here. And again, I'm thinking about this green on this inside of this apple. Okay, that's the part right there that I'm looking at. And then if I look on the back of here, I have a little bit of green in there. And I also have some really bright yellow in there. So I can go ahead and add in my yellow. And I've even got a little bit of yellow going down the sides of these. I'm going to put a tiny little bit of yellow in those rectangle areas for my highlights. So now I want to take my red and very lightly just put down a little bit of color. And I'm barely touching the paper, guys. Barely, barely, barely touching it. I'm just putting down a little bit of color because I really don't want to make this a really juicy red because it's mostly orange right here. So, and I'm just going to go back around that line and just darken that line a little bit with red. And then I want to get my light orange and I want to go back. And here's where I'm going to add in a little bit more juicy color. Even going to go back over my orange, back over my yellow. And really all that I'm doing by going back over those colors that I've already put in place is I'm really just blending them together. And so this is something that as you get older and you have more practice, you will learn that you can do with crayons. So you can always layer your crayons to make more colors. You don't just have to use the one. So that is the inside of our apple. And our first apple is finished. Voila, you have colored your first apple. Okay. So let's pick an apple that's going to represent our Granny Smith apple. So I think I'm going to just let that one be this one right here in the middle. Again, I want my darkest color in the center to kind of create the look that this is a round object. I don't have a white crayon, so we're just going to leave this area white for right now. And I'm thinking this matches this crayon or this apple. So I'm going to go in, go around those highlights, coloring in, and I'm also going to go over this green. I'm not going over the stem with this yellow green. I'm just going over the darker green shadowed area. So if you look at this, you can kind of see how it's blended together. I can still go in with this yellow-green, and I can add in a little bit more color. Maybe want to go around the edge a little bit just to kind of define it. And the further that this apple, parts of this apple are away from this light source, the darker it would look. So I'm just adding a little bit of green around it. Okay, so now we have our Granny Smith apple done. And we can actually go back and we can erase pencil marks where our highlight is. Go back and add a little bit of green in there. That way we have our highlight and our apple showing. So another way that you can create this really, really bright and bold and beautiful reddish orange apple is to just simply put down your red like we did before. Very, very lightly. You are barely touching the surface of the paper. I'm going to cover the whole apple. And this is just a basic red. I want to go with a yellow, and I think I'm going to use the goldenrod on this one. I want that blend in with some yellow at the top. Maybe in a few places around the apple. Sometimes apples will have an area where they're a little bit more one color over the other. And then I'm going to choose my orange. And I'm going to go around this edge, and I'm just going to color over the top. And I am making this, as much as possible, some juicy color. Remember we talked about juicy color? It's when we really go in and we really try to get rid of all this little fuzzy white stuff right here. And so I'm just going right around the edge of this apple that's in the front, blending that red, that yellow, and that orange together. And there we go. So there's our beautiful red-orange apple. If you want, you can go back in with your red again and darken in any areas that you feel like need to be a little bit more red. Maybe I need a little bit of red in here. Okay, so there is our beautiful reddish-orange apple. So let's go down and look at our bowl really quickly. So I'm thinking that, let's see. Okay, so we're going to go with this color. I think I'm going to do this rim of my bowl with this darker blue. Taking my time, staying inside the line. And then I'm going to do these little circles as well. I have a visitor today in the art room, and he is aggravating me to no end. I think he was thinking that he was going to go to a picnic with apples, and he's been a bit disappointed that these are not real. So maybe you will draw apples that look so real that this fly will come to see you. I would a whole lot rather have you guys in the classroom than this old fly, but he has been keeping me company since Thursday of last week. So I'm hoping that he will soon move on to other pastures. And then I think I'll even do the base down here in this blue. I want to go around my line. This is one way that we can kind of help ourselves stay in line, is we can outline with the color first and then go back in and color in the area. So I think I am going to go ahead and outline this. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and color in my bowl. Now, if you wanted to make a really pretty bowl, you might could do a blue and orange, or maybe you want to do complementary colors like yellow and purple. And maybe you want this to be a Christmas picture. Maybe you want to do red and green. This would look really pretty as a Christmas still life. And still lifes, again, are just paintings or pictures of objects that you would find around your home. You could take some of your favorite things and set them on a table and arrange them and then draw them. That would be a beautiful way to go about doing that. All right, so I'm going to show you this apple right here. It's kind of a yellowish green apple. So I'm going to show you how to go about making that apple. I think we're going to make this one this yellowish green one. So I'm going to start with the yellow coming out from the top. And then it's a little bit dark up here at the top. And then I'm going to get a little bit lighter as I go around this apple. Because I want to be able to go back in and add a little bit of color. So I'm going to take this regular green, and I'm just going to create a little bit of the area that looks kind of green over here. And notice as I color, I kind of turn my crayon where it looks like it is curved. Okay, and I used this goldenrod yellow to put down first. I added the regular green, and now I'm going to blend all this together with a regular yellow. And so I'm just going to go back over everything that I colored, and I'm going to make some juicy color in here to create this beautiful yellow apple. Maybe it isn't quite ripe yet. It's not quite ready to eat. Maybe it has a tiny little bit of orange in it. Maybe it's just now kind of starting to turn. Maybe there's a tiny little bit of reddish orange kind of pulling in there a little bit. Okay. And then I'd like to go in and finish off this leaf. So I'm going to come back around and trace this outside edge. And I'm bearing down pretty hard right now because I want to create these details. And then I'm just going to color in a little bit with the dark green. And then I'm going to go back and get that yellow green. And I'm going to finish coloring it in with some juicy color. Okay, so I'm going to let you guys use your imaginations to finish up your beautiful picture of apples. Don't forget that you can create design in the tablecloth, and you could do lots of varieties of colors of apples. So that's some of ours. This one right here is just a red with a little bit of brown and some green in it. So again, you can just add a little bit of green around the edges. Do a little bit of brown in the corners to kind of represent some shadow. Maybe there's some dimensions to this apple a little bit. And then you would just go in with your red and fill in all of your color with red. So I hope you guys enjoy this lesson. Don't forget to finish out your bowl. Create some type of tablecloth down here. And then I would not worry too much about the background today. But I hope you've had fun creating these beautiful shape apples. And again, this is inspired by the wonderful artist Paul Cezanne, who is known for his still life paintings. So I'm going to leave this up for you guys so that you can see these. Maybe turn them like this so you guys can see them both. And that way you can come back and look at these as you finish your project. So have a great day. I'll see you soon.